Hi, in this video I'm going to be covering how to get picture-in-picture in Firefox working on xmonad. If I open one of my videos, okay, and in Firefox you can see when you mouse over you have a little picture-in-picture icon. Normally when you click that, what happens is the window will open in the mode you're in. So because I'm in full screen mode, if I click picture-in-picture, normally it would go full screen. Or if I was in tiled mode, it would open as a tile next to this window instead of full screen, instead of as a picture-in-picture window. But if I click this here, you can see that it actually opens up as a picture-in-picture window, perfect right size. And if I switch layouts, here I'm in resizable tool, grid, BSP, the picture-in-picture doesn't try and be forced into the layout you're switching into. It remains as the right picture-in-picture size, and I can put that back. So normally, as I said, by default what would happen is the window would actually open as a tile if you're in tiling mode. It's still playing. So what I'll do now is, if I open it in picture-in-picture, what I can do is, in a previous video I showed you how you can set up DWM style tagging so that you can tag a window so it appears on additional workspaces. So if I hit the keyboard shortcut I've defined for that, which is Shift Mod Control and the name of the number of the workspace, I can mark that for 2 and 1, and then when I switch workspaces you can see the picture-in-picture window is on those workspaces. And if I come back to this window, I can kill the other copies of this window on the other workspaces by pressing the keyboard shortcuts I've defined, which are Shift, Control and Z. And now if I switch back you can see that it's been removed. So what I'm going to do is actually go through and explain how to set this up and what settings you need to do, and actually how I figured out what the correct bit of code was. So I'm just going to have a bit of tea. So if I put this into tiled mode for a moment, basically with xmonad what you can do is set certain classes of window to have certain attributes, like to float and things like that, or not to float. But to do that you need to know some details about the window, and you do that using the xprop command. And basically what you do is you run this command in the terminal, and it will then give you a little kind of crosshairs, and you can select a window, and when you click on that window it will then display information about the window's attributes, like its name, and if I scroll up, I think at the top it basically shows all the icons and stuff. You can see here it's basically got some information at the top here, but most of the information is down towards the bottom. Again, it displays all the icons, but you can basically see the WM class is Navigator and Firefox. Now if I open this picture-in-picture window here and then run xprop again, xprop, and select this little window here, what you can see is you've got icon name, which we don't need. You've got WM name, the window name, which is a picture-in-picture, and then you have the window class, which is Toolkit and Firefox. So first of all, I need more tea. What I tried doing was selecting the window based on the picture-in-picture name. So if I come across to my dot files, I'll just return that so it's not playing. if I come across to my dot files, what we needed to set up was one thing I actually missed in the main. You can see you've got your main hook, manage docs, myManageHook, ManageHook, desktop config. I'd actually missed out this section here, myManageHook, and what that refers to is this myManageHook section here, which allows you to set Windows attributes based on their sort of their name, so you can just sort of set it to float or not float, but you need the name of the window first of all. So what you can do is basically, for instance, you can say here, for example, GIMP float. So that would say all windows that are GIMP would not float, would float. Sorry, do float. So first of all, if you just set class name Firefox do float, what that would do is that would float the entire Firefox window. Picture-in-picture would then work, but the problem is Firefox would then always be floating above whatever layout you're in. It wouldn't conform to the layout. So, you know, if you're in tiling or grid or whatever, Firefox would still be a floating window. So what I had to do was, you can actually set class name Firefox, and so this is a bit like sort of the Unix and command, and then what we're doing is resource equals toolkit. And if you remember, when I selected the picture-in-picture window with the xprop command, it returned a window title name of picture-in-picture, but also window class of Firefox and toolkit. And what I found was the picture-in-picture attribute title name that you could use didn't seem to work, but doing class name Firefox and resource toolkit then applied just to the picture-in-picture floating window, so that you can have Firefox so that it's not floating, but then when you have a window that has the attribute toolkit, which is the picture-in-picture window, that it should float. So that basically means that Firefox doesn't float, but the picture-in-picture window does. So that's how we set that up, is that you have your manage hooks, and down in the main section here you need to have myManageHook here as well, because otherwise, even though this is in your config, if that's not there, it won't actually do anything. So that's how you actually set Firefox to have a floating picture-in-picture window. And the next thing I was going to do is have a look at MPV player. So for instance, I'm in full screen mode here, and if I open a video, and just open this one for instance, you'll see that it actually opens bang in the middle of the screen, sort of set to half its size. So rather than opening in like, if this is full screen mode, by default what would happen is when you open the video, it would go full screen. It wouldn't overlap the bar in this mode, because you can see we've got the strut here. So what would happen by default is, if you were in full screen mode and you open the video, it would occupy the full screen. So same thing as if I was in tiled mode here, you can see it's still opening exactly in the center of the screen. And the other advantage of this is, normally if you don't float the window, it will conform to the layout that you're in. And basically, if you're in full screen mode normally, it will always open full screen, and the MPV shortcuts that you normally use to go full screen, like F to go full screen and toggle back to normal size, wouldn't work. But if I press F here now, what you'll see is the video goes full screen, but it also goes full screen above the strut here. So you can see that has gone full screen, and I can toggle back, and I haven't, and the struts here. Normally what you'd have to do, if you're playing a video, you'd open it like that in the command line, and you'd have to toggle the struts like that to remove the bar so that you could get the video full screen. So you know, if you're in full screen in this mode, you'd have to always be you'd always have to be you know, full screen like that when you're playing videos to get them to go full screen, which means you couldn't see the bar. But if you basically set MPV up like this as a floating window, when you open it, you can toggle full screen like that without having to toggle the struts, and you can hold down the mod key and use the right mouse key to resize the video, and the mod key and the left mouse to move it. So once you've done that, you could then, for instance, tag that window across multiple workspaces. So again, I'll say I'll tag it for workspace 3. Oh, I thought I tagged it for workspace 3. Let me try that again. Oh yeah, no. Basically, what it is I think I tagged the actual. You see here, this is the terminal that I've opened that is displaying the MPV on screen display. So if I think, yeah, okay. So what I'd done is I'd set the terminal to be on this screen as well. But you can see now here, and I can also tag that for workspace 2, and so that way you can basically launch a video and easily toggle full screen. So when you open a video, it's not going to obscure everything you're doing, and you can easily toggle it full screen, resize it, hold down the mod key and the right mouse key. Again, you can move it, and it's just easier than having to toggle the struts on and off. So what I'll do is have a look at basically how we did that. First of all, what we need to do is import this xmonad library, which is Data.Ratio. And basically what this does is it allows us to sort of calculate the center of the screen so that we can resize the video to half its size and it will always be bang in the middle of the screen. So that's the first thing you need to do, is import Data.Ratio, and you can see this little section here that's needed. And then once you've done that, if you come down to myManageHooks, and again you need to make sure you've got your manage hooks down here, otherwise it won't work. And basically no, it's not it's my manage hooks here. I was looking at my keys because that's something else I need to cover as well. You can see here we've got MPV, doRectFloat, and this rational rect, and then this, and this basically sets the position of the video and the size of the window. So we've done that, and now the other thing is how do you get a floating window back into tiled mode. So if I'll show you the key here. I need to correct that spelling mistake. What I've done is in my config, in a previous video I showed you how to set keyboard shortcuts to jump to a particular layout. So by default with xmonad, what you can do is press the mod key and space to toggle through the layouts. But what I've done here is set up some keyboard shortcuts to jump through these particular layouts, like mod F for full, mod T, which is tiled, mod G, grid mod B, which is BSP, and the mod T shortcut, it was actually used by default by xmonad to flatten a floating window back into tiled mode. So what I've done is added this command here, which is shift mod T, and what this does is this will set a floating window to go back into tiled mode. So I'll show you what I mean. If I switch to tiled mode here and open the video again, you can see it's floating here. If I press shift mod T, you can now see that it's a floating window. And basically, to get this to go back to this has gone back into a tiled window, and to get it back into a floating window, you need to use the mouse and press the mod key, and then I think it's the right key, right mouse key, and then you can get it back as a floating window. So you can, once you've got it floating, you can bring it back into the stack, as it were, by pressing mod shift T, and that will put it back into the stack, and then use the mouse like that to bring it back as a floating window. I haven't figured out a way to create a shortcut, a keyboard shortcut to do that, but that's something I want to have a look at. So that's basically how you can set a keyboard shortcut to set a floating window to go back into tiled mode with this bit of code down here. And this was the MPV settings to float it in the center of the window. And so that's most of the things I wanted to cover with setting up video stuff like picture-in-picture with Firefox and MPV player. I did have a look at trying to get Chromium's picture-in-picture behaving the same way, because by default in Chromium, if you open a window and you haven't set any rules, the picture-in-picture won't float unless you set the whole of Chromium to float. And actually I couldn't even manage to get that to work for some reason. So that was one thing I hadn't managed to get working. But I had a comment in the under a video asking about getting icons up here, not like you know, blingy icons, but icons that applications launch, you know, whether it's like a network manager or that sort of thing. And I think what you need to do is if you search for DistroTube GitLab and have a look at DT's xmonad file, if I come down to, I think it's line 102 down here, what I'll do is I'll come across into the raw mode so that you can actually see the full bit of text. So if you come up here and you select open raw, it will open the file as a raw sort of text file, and you can see under the my startup hook, what you can do is use the Trayer panel and set it to appear up the top here, and set the height and transparency and stuff, and then when you launch an application that has a sort of menulet, it will appear in the Trayer panel up at the top. So you need to install the Trayer package for that, so that your icons will show up here for different applications. And the other thing that someone mentioned was how do you set up urxvt's copy and paste. So if I come across into my xresources file down the bottom, this is a section here. You need to enable these sort of Perl extensions like default keyboard, selection to keyboard, and this bit of code down here will copy with shift control C and paste with shift control V. By default I think it's set to use alt and not shift, but I prefer shift, so that's how I've set urxvt to copy and paste. So just a brief recap of stuff. Picture in picture, you can be in any mode in Firefox, so like I'll stick this into tiled mode. I'll open the picture in picture and you can see it opens just as it should and not as a tile beside the window. And again, I can shift to any different kind of mode and it will still remain in place. And to do that, basically, if I come back to xmonad, you needed to set up a couple of things. You need to make sure your ManageHook was set down in the main, and under the window rules we've got class name Firefox and resource toolkit doFloat, and that's what sets the picture in picture window to float, but not Firefox. And the other thing is setting up MPV is you need to import the Data.Ratio library there, and then once you've done that, come into myManageHooks. You see, make sure you've got myManageHook set up, and we've got MPV do rectangular float here, and basically that's a bit of code I found to open the window, bang in the center about half its size, and then you can sort of resize it and set it to you know, move it to the top right of the screen, and then set it tag it so that it appears on multiple screens. So that was there's a couple of videos I did about xmonad, and that's the one about setting up DWM style window tagging, and and the previous video I did about setting up Rofi as an application launcher so that it shows icons next to the applications and also lets you switch workspaces and shows you what applications are on workspaces. So for instance, I can switch to workspace 2 of Emacs by typing Emacs or pressing 2, and then back to Firefox like that. So there's a couple of videos about setting up xmonad, and this was basically setting up picture in picture MPV, so that using video is a bit easier, and you know, pause that full screen, toggle full screen, so you've got the ability to toggle full screen like that, and resize the window, and then again tag it to appear on another workspace if you want. So that's a couple of things with xmonad, and using video either in the browser or in the terminal, and how you can float, you know, how windows behave when they're floating, and how you can put them back into tiled mode and then bring them back out of tiled mode using the mouse.